Welcome to episode 304 of the DFO Rundown, brought to you by Bet365, our betting partner, just in time for the 2024 playoffs. We'll be here with Bet365 to provide you all the news, analysis, lines, and betting options for the playoffs. Use the promo code DAILY365 until there's one team left standing. And there's still 8 of them, Frank, as only 6th time in NHL history have all 4 series in the second round required at least 6 games. I'm Jason Gregor. He is Frank Saravalli. And the Dallas Stars unable to dispatch of the Colorado Avalanche last night. So teams facing elimination are now 4-0 in the second round. They are not going away easily.
Yeah, I was going to say the stat's amazing because it certainly looked like half of the series, at least this round, might not make it past 5. So at least half, could have been more. Yeah. So it's that part has kind of been amazing to watch. Not really surprised though, because just think back to 10 days ago, we were saying this might be one of the best second rounds ever with how close these teams are, and to see 3 of the series jump out to 3-1 leads, like that was kind of surprising. I'm not really shocked or stunned that the margin separating these teams is so razor thin that this has sort of developed back into close series. Now, it's kind of tough. If I were to rank the series right now, and we're taping this Thursday morning, May 16th at 6:30 a.m. Pacific time and 9:30 out in the East. I'm in Vancouver. If I were to rank which team has the best chance down 3-2 to come back and win the series, I would rank it Colorado 1, Carolina 2, and then
Boston
3. I bet we're aligned in that Boston is 3, but I guess you could debate Carolina or Colorado.
Yeah, the Hurricanes obviously have a boatload of momentum going right now, having won 2 in a row. You would think, hey, winning 3 in a row, the Rangers did it to start the series, so I guess Carolina can do it. Colorado, it's funny, and now I do wonder, and we'll get to the Nichushkin thing in a second, but they didn't look good at all in game 4. Their top stars really in game 3 and 4, their big guns were silent. And when Colorado's big guns are silent, they're going to have a really hard time winning. Now you can make that statement about a lot of teams, but I think, they're one of the teams that definitely relies on their best guys, especially this year. They don't have the depth of their 2022 Cup winning team. But their best guys were great last night. Cale Makar.
I think they have more depth than 2022.
What?
I don't even think it's close.
What? No Nichushkin, no Kadri, no Landeskog. Not close.
Okay. I think their third and fourth lines are better.
Yeah, but their second line is.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
Like with Nichushkin out, that's odd. Like he had 9 goals, man, before he gets suspended. Like he was playing unreal. So before him, maybe you could make a little bit of an argument, but with him gone now, they're big guns, and I know we'll get to him in a second. But Makar's going to have to be Makar.
He was last night.
Yeah, they didn't have Taves in game 4. He was ill, but he comes back. That's obviously huge. When you get a top pair defenseman, McKinnon, was his usual self last night. But really, Cale Makar, they have some guys who can take games over almost by themselves, and we saw that. That's the one thing. As good as Dallas's guys are, and I know that Wyatt Johnson had an unreal game 4, but I don't want to put that much pressure on a young player just yet to say he can take over games, although it's close. But Makar and McKinnon, I think, and even Rantanen probably have more, of a track record of doing that. So they can be guys who just take over a game, where Dallas has way more depth overall, but they don't have the top end guys to match Colorado's.
I guess my reasoning for putting them in the top spot is in terms of chances. Look at the way this team has managed deficits all year. They've routinely come back in games. I don't think they're looking at this saying, hey, 2 more games to win in a row. what you've already accomplished, you can put in the rearview mirror. It's only, can you win the next 2 games? And that's not like, would anyone be shocked if Colorado won 2 in a row?
No, I don't think so. I would agree. I'd probably rank it the same as you. I think it'd be 1, 2, 3. Carolina, I give them a lot of credit. I thought they were kind of done after game 3, but they've bounced back. And that third period was huge because they didn't really have a great first 2 periods in game 5, but they had a dominant third period. And now they come home tonight. The building, they get the extra day off. I always wonder if that benefits one team or the other. Who knows? I think when you're rolling, you probably want to play. So maybe it allows the Rangers some time to exhale. But, 5-on-5, which we thought, Frank, going in, Carolina would have the advantage. Special teams obviously have been the Rangers' advantage early on. But if Carolina, whose special teams was technically better, statistically better in the regular season combined, if they can start slowing them down, well, that's the problem for the Rangers, because 5-on-5 all year long, they haven't been that dominant, right? Like, I think they were +2 or +3, 5-on-5 in the regular season. So it might come down to that now. And that could be huge for the Hurricanes, because they, I think, have a clear advantage 5-on-5.
Yeah, but I think the Rangers have some other clear advantages too. So, just going back to Colorado for a second, I thought they might have been done when Nichushkin went out. Their body language and the way that they certainly waded into that first period of game 4, like, it just, I thought they were cooked.
Well, look at the timing of that announcement, Frank. Nichushkin was on the ice for the morning skate.
But they knew right at lunchtime, early afternoon.
Yeah, but still, right? Like, he was on the ice. Then they know his locker's cleaned out. I think I understand some people's reactions. Like, what's this guy doing? He's selfish. Well, that's what addiction is. Addiction isn't normal, rational thinking, right? When you have an addiction, you don't just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to, very few people can just stop cold turkey to serious drug or alcohol, gambling, what is sex, name the smoking, name the real bad addictions. It's not easy to just snap your finger. And how many people, I've read so many books about how many people, go to therapy, they go to rehab multiple times, and some never get out of it, right? Like, it's a real bitch to deal with. And, I get that he has all the money and you're like, come on, he shouldn't be selfish, but unfortunately, you don't think rationally. And so I do feel for him and his family. I hope he gets it, but I could see how the teammates are like, obviously it's devastating because he was a big part of their team, but there's got to be some guys are going to be frustrated. And then there's some guys who are probably going to be empathetic, like, God, what's going to happen to him? So I could see how that would kind of unravel you, even though it only happened at noon hour. Like, it is, I think it would be hard at times to just, forget about it and prepare for a game.
Oh, I mean, I guess the way I look at it, I have, and you mentioned the addiction part perfectly. I think their big thing is this, and look, you can be addicted to many things, as you pointed out, but this all started with a party drug and still involves a party drug. And I think people look at that and say, that's a choice. Like, this is also at the most critical time of the year. You've left us out to dry again. When you blow off a morning skate in Seattle and you have a frantic 911 call in your room and there's a woman found heavily intoxicated that needs to be carted out, and you get whisked away by Avalanche security. And I mean, it was truly one of the most underreported stories ever. Had this been another time in another place, I mean, he just showed up at training camp again and it was like nothing ever happened. Everyone knew that he left the team and under murky circumstances, but they kept it under wraps. The team accepted him back into the fold. So first strike last year in the playoffs, second strike this year going into the program again and leaving the team for a huge chunk of the season. They get him back and they're thinking, okay, hopefully he's on the mend. We've fixed this here. And then now, same thing in the playoffs again. Your team is battling. You mentioned the depth and guys that they don't have from 2 years ago. This is a guy it's not just any guy. This is someone leading the playoffs in scoring. And now you fail a drug test? Like, I think that they feel, just reading between the lines and talking to some people around that team, that's one of the most dialed in groups. Like, Nathan MacKinnon runs a tight ship. Nathan MacKinnon doesn't put Coca-Cola in his body. And other guys are making other choices. Like, I think they view that as a real breach and violation of trust. And I understand if that's how they feel, what they're feeling, because it's a singular entity, a team. And when you step outside of the framework of that to freelance, I don't know how Val Nichushkin will ever step into that locker room again. They brought him back in training camp. I think at this point, when you see a locker cleaned out and a nameplate replaced that quickly in 8 hours, that's a team telling you we're moving on.
Well, yeah, he's suspended for 6 months.
But that brings you right back to camp and the opening of the regular season. So I'm saying now they do not have the ability to terminate his contract, but if they get a window in which they can, I wouldn't be surprised if they do, because I don't think that they can work with Val Nichuskin again.
And they might think that way. I do think it's important to point out, and you say it's a team's a single entity. Well, it's really like a family. And for any of our listeners out there, and anybody who will be like, hey, they know how it is, because when you have a family member, whether it's your husband, whether it's your wife, maybe it's your son, your daughter, and you have a family unit, and you can talk to people about how addiction has ripped them apart. And you know what? Some really educated people, some smart people, some committed people that go, you know what? They're on the right path. And then all of a sudden, like, you know what? I had a childhood friend of mine, Frank, who when he was in his early 30s as a young father, all of a sudden got addicted to drugs. And his life was never the same. His family's life was never the same. Tried rehab multiple times. Unfortunately, he passed away a year and a half ago. He just couldn't get out of the life. He couldn't beat it. He tried rehab, everything. And so it's not as simple sometimes as, well, Nichushkin's an NHL player. He should care about the team, because should fathers or mothers or sons and daughters care about their family any less? Like, it's really hard.
Here's my point. And I don't think anyone's belittling the addiction part. What I'm saying is, when you do it a few times, it's really normal for a family to say, you got to move out. We love you. Hope you get the help that you need, but we can't trust you to be around our circle and to be part of our code of conduct. You violated it too many times. And that happens routinely. And that person has to leave, and maybe at some point they can come back. What I'm saying is, right now, he's moved out of the house, and I think they're in the process of changing the keys.
Yeah, they might. You definitely don't want to enable him. There's always that balance of that. And, it will be fascinating to see, what plays out, but I think it impacted them in game 4, no doubt. But you know what, by game 5 last night, they were back on track. And, that series is, now you go back to Colorado. Like, could you imagine them losing 3 straight? Like, they were the best home team in the regular season. They were not just the best, like, they dominated teams, but games 3, and even before Nichushkin, so game 3, they weren't very good at home ice. So, you know what?
That's because the Stars are really good, and people have been sleeping on the Stars. And I've been saying this quite literally since September. There is no hole on this team.
Yeah. Well, they're good too, but so is Colorado. Like, I think that series is going 7. I think Colorado's going to find a way to win on home ice. And you know what? Now, maybe that's just me, because I love game 7s. Like, I'd love all 4 series to go game 7. It'd be amazing. Like, Carolina, the drama of them, if they win game 6, now you're going to MSG for game 7. The Rangers won 3. Now the Hurricanes would have won 3. Like, are you kidding me? That'd be an unreal story. And then what about the Bruins? Can they reverse what happened to them last year? They were up 3-1, a heavy favorite. and they
I
lose
don't
the
see
series.
it.
Yeah.
I just.
Did you see them winning game 5?
I did, but I thought it was the Panthers'
Really?
worst game.
Yeah, but see, I didn't think they would, but you're right. Like Florida didn't play great, but
What are the
now
odds that we're going to get that a couple more times from Florida? I just think there's a clear gap and separation between the two teams that at some point will prevail. It doesn't always, but that's my thought process. And I just think I think Boston, is really flawed. I really do. I think there's a clear over-reliance on their goalie who's been fantastic, but I just don't see them getting pushed around for a couple more games.
Yeah, it would be hard, especially like Brad Marchand. Is he going to play or not? Obviously, that would be a boost if he does. But I agree with you. Florida's the clear favorite. Then of the 3 series, I think we both agree that Boston has, I think, the lowest odds to push it to 7 or even win. But selfishly, I hope they do. Like, to me, that's just a great storyline. It would be awesome. I don't think
the two best words in the English language when used together: Game 7.
So
I mean, here's the thing: how much are the Oilers and Canucks rooting for Stars and Avs to go 7 just to beat the heck out of each other? Because that might be their best opportunity. You give the Stars 2. Let's just say the Stars win. The Stars go 2 consecutive series of Game 7 slobber knockers.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, look at the way the first one played out. The toll and taxing grind to knock off Vegas, then to do it again against a better Avs team. I mean,
and you're seeing
nothing about the Stars' run so far have they made life easy on themselves. Down 2-0 to start against Vegas on home ice, have a 3-1 series lead now against Colorado. You've got them right where you want them on the ropes, and you can't step on their throat. And now, what if it goes to 7 and let's say you win? I mean, you're going to be staggering a little bit heading into the Western Conference Final, even if I think everyone almost universally believes that whoever comes out of that Stars Avs series is going to be in the driver's seat against the winner of the Pacific.
Well, definitely if it's Vancouver. I think Edmonton has a better chance against those two teams. It'd be the first time they'd face a team that doesn't really sit back as much. But I'll say this about the Stars. You talked about the wear and tear, right? Tanev's banged up. He did play, but Rupe Hintz, man, that is an underreported injury for them. No Rupe Hintz. The fact the Stars are basically playing 5 defensemen all playoffs, Frank, I think that's another storyline. So you're right, at the war of attrition. Like, I think it was the Kings in 2014 or 12, whenever they played like 20, they went 3 consecutive game 7s in the first 3 rounds and then won the cup in 5. But so it can happen, but I do think it's harder. And Dallas, they obviously would love to finish it in 6 if they could, because you're right. I think that wear and tear can become a factor, more so for the injury bug, as guys are beaten up and they're already down. Like, you look at their minutes on their blue line and the fact that they basically are playing 5D. And then Chris Tanev now is, he's banged up. He did play, but he's nursing something. And if that becomes something bigger, well, that becomes even more difficult for them. So I think it's a huge game 6 for Dallas just to win it. A, you get the series, but B, you get a little bit more rest.
Yeah, 100%. That's why I said they're rooting.
No. Hey, well, yeah, the Oilers and the Stars, like, you know what? You get to that series, game 5 tonight. An interesting stat I got from the NHL. In a series that is tied 2-2, the team that wins game 5 wins the series 79.8% of the time. They're 231 wins, 61 losses. So safe to say tonight is a rather large game.
So you're telling me that the team goes up 3-2 has a better chance to win the series?
Significantly better in that series, right? Like in 2-2s, like 80%.
Well, of course, because then the other team has to win 2 straight. Like, of course that they win at 80% of the time.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
I mean, I hear, like, no, I'm not knocking you or the stat. I just hear it. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yes. Sure.
No, well, 80% is pretty high. Like, I would have thought maybe 70, maybe 65, but 80 is high. And so the Edmonton Oilers franchise has never lost a series when it was tied 2 and they won game 5. They're 8-0. The Canucks are 3-1 all time. And I know it's different years, but when you look at certain things historically, and When the road team wins that game 5, Frank, it's even more because now you come home for game 6, right?
Yep.
So that's why it's a big game for Edmonton, but I'd argue it's a bigger game for Vancouver.
I'm fascinated to see what changes Rick Tocchet makes, not just to his lineup, but also to how he adjusts, because I think it was really underreported as well in game 3, the changes that he made, particularly in their own end. Like, so think back to this series, right? Game 2, third period, Oilers absolutely, they're eating out of the palm of their hand in the third period. But for a whole period, and they it looked like they had solved the Canucks a bit, and they were absolutely, if momentum existed game to game, they would be carrying that over, bottling it up, and bringing it back to Edmonton for game 3. They didn't have it. Tocchet starts the Dakota Joshua line. They punch the Oilers in the face 3 times in the opening shift, and the Canucks are off and running. But then when it mattered most again in game 3 in the third period, when the Oilers played McDavid and Draisaitl 13 out of the 20 minutes, the Oilers obviously had the puck a ton, but the Canucks got way more kills of plays. They made way better adjustments in their own end to try and halt a little bit what Edmonton was trying to do. And the Oilers only ended up with 1 or 2 high danger chances, despite having the puck for almost 3/4 of the period or more than that. So I think his coaching staff did a fantastic job of, hey, they spent 15, 16 hours watching tape and really trying to find a solution. Game 4, bit of a different game, and the Oilers won in a bit of a different way, but now we head to 5, and it's, I think you're out of time with Pettersson. Like, I think you have to try and solve for this problem, which is a guy who is clearly afraid to make plays with the puck in the inner slot. He has 0 inner slot shots so far in these playoffs. And this is someone that has routinely given up the puck when pressured to avoid contact. So now what? The complaint here in Vancouver is, well, is it chicken or the egg? Is it that Pettersson hasn't been good enough, or is it that he's been playing with line mates who are no good? My personal thought on that is, when you're due to make $11.6 million next year and you are a 90+ point player consistently in this league, it's on you to be the driver of a line. However, I think the Canucks would be wise to at least do something a little bit different with their lineup this time, even if he has been a passenger, to say, we're going to give you a period or 2. You can't bitch anymore. You either come to play and we put you with good players, or we can just cast you off to the side for the rest of the series, however long it lasts. So I think they should give him a shot to see if they can get him going and find a way to create more offense, because they have the puck a lot, but they don't really make a lot happen with it. The Oilers have given up the fewest high danger chances, the fewest scoring chances against of any team still standing in the playoffs. And the Canucks you can't sit back anymore. You have to find a way to create more. And that's why I think the adjustments that Tocchet made, and he hinted at it, I got to take the bat off my shoulder. I'm going to swing here. Like, it's go time for Vancouver.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually think the Oilers feel the exact same way 5-on-5. They've outshot Vancouver 93-61 5-on-5. Their forwards have 3 goals. The problem is their forwards only have 53% of their 5-on-5 shots, Frank. They don't have, their forwards aren't taking it to the net, and they're not getting enough traffic. Vancouver said, hey, you want to get the puck back to the blue line? Fine. We'll let you take shots there because we know you don't have bodies in front. Right? Like, and then they've got,
how many times are they going to cycle with it? And it looks pretty. Like, it looks like they're making stuff happen, but you're right. They're not getting to the critical area.
Yeah. Like Evander Kane, Ryan McLeod, Dylan Holloway have 3 shots 5-on-5 in the series. Corey Perry has 1. Derek Ryan has 1. Janmark has 2. Fogle has 4. Like, it's not enough from their depth guys, right? And even their top guys, to me, like outside of Draisaitl and Hyman 5-on-5, they need more from them. So I look at the orders. They've talked about it lots. Draisaitl even mentioned it after their win in Game 4 that, you know what, we need to do more 5-on-5. I think both Vancouver, you're right. They got to get Pettersson going. The Lotto line, I could see why they'd want to put it back together. You know, Connor Garland's probably been their best player 5-on-5, at least their best forward the last few games for the Canucks.
And that's problematic. Like JT Miller had been that guy the entire first round. He was a horse.
Well, did you see the story that he texted his coach after his Game 4 performance and said, "Hey, sorry, man." Like I'll say this about JT Miller. Right after the game, he said, "Hey, I was terrible on the game-winning goal. I got to be better. I didn't get in the lane. I didn't get up." Like, you know what? There's a guy, like, I've liked JT Miller, man. Like,
oh my God. I am such a JT Miller fan. He competes. He's got edge. He works. And obviously, to your point, he cares. He's one of those guys that I think has rubbed some people the wrong way, including some teammates, because he's so intense that, you know, he's a guy that's been in Pettersson's grill before. Because that's his nature. And it's like, if you're not giving the same effort and compete that I am, then, hey, we're going to leave you over here on the sidelines. That's a fantastic engine to have for a team, but only when you can channel it the right way. And I think he's shown so much maturity and growth the last couple years to kind of harness that energy in a better way, that he's like an unquestioned leader. And by the way, also just an unquestioned really good player. Since he arrived in Vancouver a few years ago, he's like, go look at the stats the whole time. He's a top 10 player in the league in scoring.
Yeah. Like, I you know what, we talk a lot about Pettersson. I think the one thing that's, you know, Quinn Hughes in the series has the Canucks have 8 goals 5-on-5. He's been on the ice for 1. He doesn't have a point 5-on-5 in the series. And, you know, he's one of their best players. I think he needs to get more involved offensively. He has 3 points on the power play, but he has none 4-on-4, and he's only been on the ice. Now, he hasn't been on the ice for any goals again, so that's been very good. But I think they look at Quinn Hughes and say, hey, when he's on the ice, and he's played the most minutes, 77 minutes out of their 196 5-on-5, they don't have any goals with him on the ice. I think that's another element. They'd like to find a way to get him more involved.
I lied. JT Miller got there in 2019-20. Since then, he's 11th.
Yeah, wow. It's close.
I mean, the guys, so this is the company that he's kept, and this is how good he has 22 more points than Sidney Crosby, who's 12th. The guys in front of him are Matthew Tkachuk, Mikko Rantanen, Nikita Kucherov, Mitch Marner, David Pasternak, Austin Matthews, Artemi Panarin, Nathan McKinnon, Leon Draisaitl, and Connor McDavid. I mean, you know, the other amazing thing about JT Miller being here in Van, they love him. When they announce him in the starting lineup,
no, how can they not?
Well, they didn't for a while.
Yeah.
That he was you say that's my point. You say that and you don't remember that 2 years ago, 3 years ago, people were like, this is the worst contract extension anyone's ever seen. This is an albatross. I did Van radio for years when it was like, how can we find a way to get rid of this guy?
Are you saying they overreact in Vancouver? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. Well, did you see the story yesterday about them burning the Canucks jerseys on statues? I mean, the jokes write themselves about this city burning itself down.
And the jerseys were on there, I think, for 1 day. So didn't,
But
now that's probably only one idiot in a big city, but still.
But they announce him in the starting lineup, and the announcer, all he says is JT, and then the crowd finishes his last name. And then when he scored the other night in this series, during an entire TV timeout, when they went to break, there was no music. There was no, hey, let's give away, T-shirts or whatever. No sales pitch. The crowd just chanted for 3 whole minutes, JT Miller. And so when you think about that change, the sea change of, we got to take this guy and send him to the moon a couple years ago, to his name reverberating and echoing through Rogers Arena, that's amazing.
I'm curious about the matchup. Hey, getting Carson Soucy back for Game 5 is obviously going to be a big boost. And Noah Jolson played fine, actually. And I don't think he really looked out of place at all. But Soucy,
Would you take out Ian Cole?
Yeah,
he's had struggled. Some egregious turnovers. Like, this is a guy with Stanley Cup pedigree that was brought in for this exact moment. I know they like him and trust him. I just think you have to at least ask the question, because
Jolson's mobility, I noticed way more.
Yeah. And I don't know if they'll do it, but I think that's one of those fascinating lineup questions. And then the other one is, you've got some stud prospects that have never played. Would you put a Jonathan Lekera-Mackey? Would you put him in a game tonight?
Well, Rick Tocchet, man, I'll say this. He pulled no punches in his post-game press conference after Game 4. We got 7 passengers. We got some guys who don't even know it's the playoffs. So, yes, I would be stunned, Frank, if he's not going to inject something into his lineup. I think there's going to be at least one lineup change, possibly 2, right? I could see them going back to Höglander, but I could see them making some other changes as well. I won't be surprised at all. Like, I'll say this about Tocchet. He wears his emotions on the sleeve. You know exactly where you stand. I'm sure he is a guy, I've been told, like, what you hear in the media, you've already heard privately. Like, he is not going to the media and saying we got a bunch of passengers before he's telling those guys to their face that we got too many passengers.
I think he's start to finish this year has been so impressive for Rick Tocchet.
Yeah. Well, hey, speaking of big changes, Chris Knobloch went to Calvin Pickard as his backup, and Pickard wasn't great, but he was solid, and that's all Edmonton needs. You've talked earlier about.
What do you mean he wasn't great? He had a .909 save percentage, and the 2 goals scored, I think the Oilers take any time.
Oh, no, but I mean, like, he didn't need to be great. It's not like Vancouver was.
No, but I thought he was great, all things considered. Like,
I just thought he was exactly what they needed. A steady goaltender who never looked out of place. I don't think he fought one puck at all. You have 2 pucks that go in off of deflections, one off of his guy, one off. Although, by the way, Brock Besser, you watch that replay on the tying goal. That's a purposeful aim for his teammate's leg. He didn't try to even shoot that on goal. He aimed it perfectly, and it went in off of the teammate in front. That's how goals are scored sometimes in the playoffs. But you get bodies in front, and we've seen that, right? Both ways. How many goals have went in? Like, Ian Cole, I think, has 2 in off of him, maybe 3. Vancouver's had 3 or 4.
2 off of him, but definitely a couple more turnovers off of his stick. So
yeah. So it'd be an interesting one if they do it. Like, I did notice, like, Noah Jolson's, I thought his mobility really stood out in that game for Vancouver. I thought he added a lot to them.
So here's the next question. Shelovs has been really good for the Canucks. Steady, consistent, everything you could want for someone filling in. Thatcher Demko has been ramping it up. Wednesday was his 3rd consecutive day taking shots. Thursday will be his 4th. Be curious to see if he's out there for the morning skate today. If you get to Game 6, like, let's play the hypothetical game.
Well, you're getting to Game 6 for sure.
No, if you get to Game 6 down 3-2, let's say the Canucks lose Game 5 on home ice. If they win, it's an easy decision. You just go with Shelovs because you've got an extra game to play with if you need to. But if you lose Game 5 and Thatcher Demko is available to you, are you going with him?
It's a really good question. I guess part of it depends on, do we lose Game 5 2-1, 3-2, and our goalie's really solid? Because you know what?
I think the same stylistic question, by the way, can apply to the Oilers. If the Oilers lose Game 5, but I think with what you're saying is, while I cut you off, if Pickard plays well and they lose 2-1, you still go back with Pickard, right?
Now, see, I could see them going to Skinner simply because he's played. I know it necessarily hasn't played as well as he'd like, but he did win him Game 4 against the LA Kings with the 1-0 shutout when they got outchanced and outshot significantly. I think they look at Skinner as somebody they want to go back to. Chris Knobloch said that at some point. Might not, if they win Game 5, I don't think they go back to him, but if they lose, I definitely think it's more open. The risk with Demko is he's coming off a groin injury, Frank, my understanding.
No, he's not.
Or
he's
knee
coming
injury?
off of a knee injury.
Well, okay. Well, groin or knee for a goalie, it's just that position. There's so much strain on your legs and your groin and your hips that Like, I think Edmonton brought Adam Henrique back on an ankle injury too quick, and he hasn't played since. And he's a forward. I would need to see Demko. Like, I'd probably need to see him in a full practice, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, you don't have full practices this time of year, but that's why I said it'll be really interesting if he's out there for the morning skate today.
Yeah.
I don't
Game
think he's a
7,
possibility.
Maybe, but game 6, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's going to be right on the edge. I don't think this is something that he can injure further, but it's just how good can he be? And it's a fluke, weird knee injury that if you asked me to describe it to you in detail, I couldn't because it's that weird.
Well, I think the question will be watching him, how is he moving? Because being on the ice and taking shots is one thing. It's can he make all the moves necessary? And do you push it in practice to a point where say, okay, let's do, some in zone cycling now. He's got to go crease to crease here. Let's get some one timers. You know what I mean? Like you're going to have to find a way that they can bring game situations in practice to see, can he push off that hard and can he do it? Because if you do it for 5 minutes in practice, Frank, that's one thing. Can you do it for 60 minutes in a game? That, to me, I don't know the answer to it, but they're going to have to try to test it. Sheelas has played well enough, right? But obviously Demko, if he's healthy, he's a better goalie. I think we all know that. But is he going?
He's one of the 3 or 5 best goalies on the planet.
If he's
healthy. So against the Edmonton Oilers this year, Thatcher Demko 2-0 with a .954, 62 saves on 65 shots. And for his career, Thatcher Demko, 14 games played, .919 save percentage. I bet there's not many goalies in the Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl era that have played that many games that have a save percentage of .919, given how many goals the Oilers score. For any team that he's played 10 or more against, he's only got better numbers against the Jets and the Sharks. So Thatcher Demko has been an Edmonton Oiler menace. He's a big reason why they are 6-2 against the Oilers this year.
Yeah, well, hey, that would be a huge question. It won't be for tonight, but man, it would be a fascinating one if we get it for game 6. Let's bring in Tyler Yaremchuk to the pod. Ty, how you doing?
I am doing good, gentlemen. Ready to go with a new edition of Buy or Sell, and it's brought to you by our friends at Wendy's. Wendy's only ever uses fresh Canadian beef that's never seen the inside of a freezer in all their burgers. So whether you're ordering a Baconator, which I had the other day, delicious, a Dave Single, or even a JBC, you'll only ever find real fresh beef that's real juicy and loaded with fresh toppings. Download the Wendy's app, check out the latest deals, and order a burger that's only job is being delicious. Just on the heels of
I was just going to ask, are you growing a playoff goatee? What are you doing there?
I know I can't, so I'm semi-riding with the guys on Oilers Nation Radio. I'm shaving at the end of every round, so this is like a week, which is wildly embarrassing, I should add. But thanks for bringing that up, Frank. Appreciate that. On the heels of your guys' conversation about the goalies, Skinner and Demko, if you had to buy on seeing one of them in this series, who would you buy on? Frank?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Skinner or Demko, if you had to buy on seeing one of them in this series, which one do you think is more likely?
Skinner.
Really?
Only because I think the Canucks, this series is still tied for a reason. Like, they have found a way to make magic happen, and I think this is the toughest part for the Oilers to reckon with. Is Pickard has done what he's needed to do. It's been one game so far. I think internally they have to know that he's not the long-term answer, because if they have any chance to beat the Stars or the Avs, likely the Stars, Skinner's ceiling is so much higher. He's got the ability to lift that team when he plays well. The point is they have to get there first. And Pickard may be the guy that gets them there. But when that next series starts, I think you have to go back to Skinner. And I think knowing that in the back of their head, the easiest way to do that might be at some point again in this series. Get his confidence back up so that he's not absolutely, entering potentially the Western Conference Final with a sphincter tightener.
Jay?
Yeah, odds would tell me it's Skinner. I think there's a good chance you might see neither. If this series only goes 6 games, I could see both goalies sitting out, especially if Edmonton wins game 5. I think they go back to Pickard. And I'm not, there's been so much talk about Demko, and I get why, and they want him back. I don't know if you can risk him coming back. So,
couple of off-season ones for you guys. We saw David Rittich sign a 1-year extension with the LA Kings yesterday. We're expecting it to be a busy summer in LA. With Rittich coming back, I'm curious about the future of Cam Talbot. Buy or sell on Talbot being a King next year, or do you think they need to upgrade and not run with the same duo, Greg's?
Oh, I think Rittich signing first tells me that I'd be very surprised if they're going to. Now, he signed for what, $1 million, so slightly higher than last year. I know they had a combined total of like $2 million between the two of them, or 1.875, I think, to be exact. So I think they will look at other routes first, and you can always circle back later on, but I think that they will be looking elsewhere.
Frank?
Yeah, totally agree. I think they have to. Rittich makes sense as a nice insurance gap, coverage policy. In fact, I think the best case again is to have Rittich be your third guy, and even if that means to start the year, you can always put $1 million in the minors without any harm to your cap. And so I think the best case for the Kings is to get 2 additional goalies, but I wouldn't. If you said to me Talbot is 2 and Rittich is 3, I'd say, okay, that's the beginning of something decent for the Kings. But you need someone that can be at least carrying more of the ball in the one hole.
Fair enough. Last one I got for you guys. Let's head out to Utah. Frank, you were the first one to report that there were talks between agent Chris Armstrong and the new Utah Hockey Club, but he is going to be their top hockey decision maker. And some interesting decisions coming this summer. No team has more cap space than Utah, $43 million. Here's your buy or sell. Utah will start the regular season with less than $10 million in cap space. Frank, buy or sell on that? Do they spend more than $33 million on players this summer?
I would be surprised if they don't have less than $5 million.
Oh,
I mean, that's just what teams spent. I mean, think about the way their cap is structured. They don't, to my knowledge, I don't think they have any defensemen under contract.
Correct.
So that's going to eat up a huge chunk of that money just right there alone, signing 6 defensemen to deals. So, I won't be surprised. I did catch up with Bill Armstrong, their GM in Vancouver. He was at game 2, and they're excited. Like, I'm excited to see what Bill Armstrong and Andre Tournier are able to do. I think they've done a fine job so far, but to do with actual resources now. And I don't just mean money. I mean everything else that you need to competently run a franchise. So that part's exciting. And his line was really kind of interesting. He said, "We'll be fine if we just don't do anything stupid this summer." And They're on the right track. I think the key is not getting carried away. And I think if you stick with a methodical plan, which is, hey, we are not in the same realm or category as the Avs, the Stars, probably the Jets. Until we can get to that category, let's not do anything that prevents us from getting there.
Mm-hmm. Greg's?
Oh, I think they're not going to be a bottom feeder team. I think gone are the days where people are going to be able to park all of their LTIR space in Utah.
None of it. They're not taking on those deals anymore.
No.
That's over.
All right, which is good, right? Like they've got Shea Weber. That's it. He's got 2 years left, right? But other than that, you won't see it. So I think in his contract, with them spending money, like they might be over the cap if they want it, just because of his, what is it, $7.8 million. So no, I think I don't see them, if they're not at the cap it's because then they're Weber's going to put them right there. They'll be under, but I think they'll be in LTIR because I think they're going to want to spend this season, be a competitive team.
All right, there you go, gentlemen. That is a wrap on today's edition of Buy or Sell, brought to you by Wendy's.
I'm fascinated to see what they do. You mentioned the defenseman, so to me, that's going to be entertaining. A few other things before we go. Shuttle, first time ever in Canadian junior hockey history, the Quebec winner, the Ontario winner, and the Western Hockey League winner all sweep their league finals. So we're going to have Drummondville, London, and for the first time ever, the Moose Jaw Warriors are into the Memorial Cup. They won the Western Hockey League for the first time. I saw a Warrior alumni loving it on social media yesterday. I think they had 10 or 12 alumni in the building for that game 4 last night. To shout out to Moose Jaw, small towns like that. You love to see it when they win, and they'll be partying there for a few days. All the teams are going to be rested. Saginaw's hosting the Memorial Cup, which starts next Friday. So all these teams will have rest. They can probably party for a day or two and then get on the ice. So the Memorial Cup should be great. Before we go, Frank, we talked about it a little bit, but the coaching updates, there's still some vacancies. If we want to say LA because it's an interim basis, so that's 6.
Yeah, but they haven't made a decision there.
Yeah.
Just put a stake in the ground. Is Jim Hiller coming back?
Yeah.
Yes or no? And then if no, is Marco Sturm, is he the guy? I think that's a fair question to ask, but solve for the first part first. And the fact that there hasn't been any news, I'm not entirely sure what's going on. Why is this taking so long?
Yeah, you'd think you'd know at this point, right? And unless they're going to, do have him as part of the internal, say, hey, you're going to be on the short list. We're going to interview other guys. But maybe that's what they've said, and they just haven't made it public. But yeah, that's a little surprising. You know what? We were looking at it last year, and the other years. You see some of these teams. You got basically 2 or 3 weeks to think. The Devils and the Leafs and the Kraken, Winnipeg.
I don't think it's going to take that long. I wouldn't be shocked if the Leafs have their coach by the end of the week.
Craig Berube.
Look, I think they've run the gamut of, hey, we're bringing in 3 to 5 people that we really like. I think Craig Berube has been at the top of their list the whole time, but he's in demand. He's also met with Winnipeg and interviewed there. He went to the end with Ottawa. The New Jersey Devils. For a long time, a lot of people thought he was going to be the guy in New Jersey, that they were just going to step up and pull the trigger. So Woodcroft, McClellan, Berube, they all go the distance in New Jersey. And then right in the 9th inning, it feels like Sheldon Keefe becomes available and the Devils bring him in. And I think a lot of the people that were watching and handicapping that situation in coaches circles were like, wait a second. I thought this was coming to a conclusion, and then Keefe's there. So there's a lot of things still up in the air. I think the Toronto Maple Leafs there's no question that they're doing their due diligence, but we'll see where it lands.
Well, it's always going to be fun. The off season for the teams that aren't playing. There's still lots of decisions to be made. Of course, you got the other playoffs in the PWHL, the Major Junior. So it's fun times. Frank, have yourself a great
before we go, I just have to pay tribute to my former TSN teammate. They announced this morning, Darren Titishin, on at 57. Just I can't even imagine such a larger than life, big guy. I can't imagine him gone. He was every room that guy was ever in, he lit up. Always just this infectious personality, and always had, for me, someone that was a total outsider, didn't know him. I start working there. The things that he would, the things he'd say, hey man, you're doing such a great job. Like, so glad you're on our team. Like, just a great teammate. And man, it's so hard the news just hits you like a ton of bricks. Just, he had been sick the last few years and quietly fighting it. And just, I got the news while I was, we were doing the pod today, and I can't it just hits you like a ton of bricks. I can't imagine him not lighting up the camera, and just such a talented guy. Great teammate.
Yeah, you know what? I'll say Dutchy was really one who kind of changed how sports guys at night did the highlights. He was unbelievable. Sports Night and Global TV. He started at a half-hour show, and man, like, it was must-watch TV. He had so many great one-liners, and it wasn't just the highlights anymore. He really added a personality to it. You're right. He was larger than life, and obviously then he went national to TSN because of it, and he made it fun. And guys like Jay on right now have continued it, and Ken Reed and others. But really, if you go back and look, Darren Nichuskin was the guy who I think really changed how the night recaps were done on TV. And he was unbelievable at it. Sports Night for a half an hour show was amazing. And he'll be missed to all of his family. I know I found out yesterday from one of his former brother-in-laws that, he had passed away. And it was really unfortunate because he'd been quietly fighting it. He'd looked for some other treatments, and, cancer's a real bitch, as everybody knows. So, all the best to everybody, his coworkers, and more importantly, his family, going through a really tough time.